She stepped out of the forest like a ghost, limping, trembling, her fur soaked and clinging to her frail frame. In her mouth, a small, barely breathing puppy dangled like a dying ember. She didn't bark, didn't growl. She just stood there, motionless in the falling snow, her wide, panic-filled eyes locked on the cabin door, as if she somehow knew what waited on the other side. Or who. That moment rewrote everything. Lives were changed, secrets emerged, and a bond unlike anything else was quietly forged between a man long broken and two souls no one had saved until now. This isn't just a rescue tale, this is the story of how they saved him. Before we dive deeper, tap that like button if you believe in love's power to heal, and drop a comment with where you're watching from, because you're going to want to witness this one unfold. Eli Brennan hadn't picked up a call in weeks, not because his phone didn't ring, but because no voice on the other end mattered anymore. His cabin, buried deep in the Montana woods, had become less a home and more a self-built mausoleum. The silence there, it wasn't peaceful, it was punishing. Days bled into nights and nights into weeks, with nothing but breath and time passing by, nothing worth responding to, nothing to live for, until that morning, until he had cracked open the front door to check the weather, expecting nothing but cold and snow. But instead, through the swirling white, he saw her at first just a smudge against the brightness. A German shepherd standing awkwardly, legs shaking, sides heaving. In her mouth, cradled like something sacred, was a puppy. Small, bloodied, barely holding on. Their eyes met and Eli froze. There wasn't fear in her gaze, there was pleading. Not desperation, but purpose. She didn't whine, didn't lower her head. She simply stood there, holding that bundle like a sacrifice laid at his feet, as if this was it, as if she had searched for him and only him. His body moved before his mind caught up, hands reaching forward instinctually. The paramedic in him, the one buried beneath layers of grief and silence, stirred awake. He lifted the tiny creature from her mouth, feeling the faintest warmth, the weakest breath. And the moment the shepherd let go, peacefully, willingly, without a fight, something inside Eli cracked open. Something long thought dead. She didn't follow him in. She simply sat by the threshold, snow beginning to pile atop her fur, still as stone, eyes fixed on the door like a soldier on watch. Eli, he did something he hadn't done in a long time. He let someone in. Both of them. The cabin was dim, barely warmed by the weak flicker of a neglected fire. Eli cleared the clutter from his old kitchen table and laid the pup down gently. Each breath was fragile, each moment a question with no clear answer. His hands trembled not from cold but memory. Another table, another life, another set of fingers he couldn't save. The shepherd, still soaked and quaking, never blinked, never moved. She watched his every motion with a focus so intense it hurt. Not with aggression, but hope. Hope wrapped in loss. A mother refusing to give up, and for the first time in years Eli realized neither did he. Outside, the snow thickened. The forest swallowed all sound, but inside the cabin, something stirred. Not just a spark in the fire, but in Eli. A fragile thread was being spun between man and beast, not coincidence but fate. He glanced down at the puppy and, without even meaning to, whispered, "I've got you now." Whether he meant the pup or himself, he wasn't sure. Stick around, because what happens next will pull you deeper into this unexpected rescue, where every heartbeat matters and the connection between a broken man and two forgotten souls might just rebuild a lifelong thought lost. The moment Eli laid the tiny puppy on the table, it felt like time broke open. Outside, the storm roared louder, as if the universe sensed this wasn't going to be just another cold night in the middle of nowhere. The cabin, once quiet, still, and hollow, became a battlefield of breath and silence. He tore open the old first aid kit stashed beneath the sink. Everything inside was aged but usable gauze, antiseptic tweezers, tools from another life when helping others had been routine, not remarkable. That rhythm, the way his fingers knew where to go, what to do, it surged back into him like muscle memory, crawling out of the grave. The puppy was icy to the touch, shivering violently despite the growing warmth of the fire. Its breaths were shallow, uneven, more guess than guarantee. Eli wrapped it gently in a thick towel, hands moving over its chest in soft circles, whispering broken little things like, "Come on, kid." Not yet. Not on my watch. The mother, still silent, watched it all unfold. Not moving, not blinking, her gaze never left her child. Every fiber of her was coiled tight, her presence still, but monumental. She stood there, soaked and shaking, embodying something more than maternal instinct. It was a vow, an unspoken demand to the universe. Try, or don't bother breathing. Then, right when Eli thought it couldn't get worse, the lights went out. The storm had killed the power. He hissed through his teeth. Of course, the backup generator hadn't been touched in weeks. The fuel lines were probably frozen over. The fire, it was all they had now. Heat, light, hope. He moved the puppy closer to the hearth, letting the fire's glow bathe its fragile body in golden shadow. His own hands trembled not just from cold anymore, but memory, because this scene, it wasn't new, it was just familiar enough to carve into him all over again. A snowy road, a twisted car frame, screams echoing off trees, his daughter's tiny fingers slipping from his grip. Sirens too late, gasoline in the air, the smell of blood and burning. That was the day he'd stopped being anyone's hero. That was the day Eli stopped trying. But tonight he wasn't trying to save the world. Just this one small soul. Just this heartbeat. And maybe himself. He looked at the shepherd again. Her eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion, but steady. They said one thing over and over: I got him this far. The rest is on you. Eli melted snow in an old pot, pressing a warm compress to the pup's chest. Every time the little thing twitched or moaned, it was like winning a war. Every silent minute that followed brought fresh dread. He didn't sleep, not a second. The fire hissed, the storms screamed. The world outside could have collapsed and Eli wouldn't have noticed. He sat vigil like it was the only thing he'd ever been meant to do. The mother never moved either. She stood sentinel over her baby, like a soldier at a grave, still there even in death. And somehow in her presence, in her absolute devotion, Eli's pain became bearable. Not gone, but not solitary. Not anymore. Dawn began to bleed across the horizon, turning the windows pale with soft gold. The fire crackled once like a heartbeat beside them. The puppy let out a faint whimper. Eli froze, then exhaled, a breath like glass shattering. "Good job, kid," he whispered. And maybe, just maybe, he meant himself too. Stay close. Because what's coming next will unravel the mystery even more, buried in snow silence and a danger darker than any winter storm. By mid-morning, the storm had eased, but the chill lingered, creeping through the walls, through Eli's bones. He hadn't slept. Couldn't. He sat near the fire, eyes heavy but heart awake, watching the tiny bundle curled up beside it. He had started calling the pup Scout. The name had come without effort, like it was already his. Scout was still fragile, wrapped in layers of warmth, but breathing steady now. His little limbs twitched in sleep and his body no longer felt like ice. The worst for now was behind them. And the mother, she'd finally dozed off, lying across the doorway like a guardian, one eye open, half in dream, half in prayer. Eli watched her for a long while. "You look like a Luna," he murmured. She twitched an ear. Luna. The name fit. There was something about her presence, more. Not just the look in her eyes, but the way she accepted it, as if she understood not just the word, but the moment of being seen, of being named. And yet something wasn't sitting right. Luna kept glancing toward the frosted window again and again. Always in the same direction, not random, not anxious, watchful, like whatever she had run from wasn't over. Eli felt the hair on the back of his neck rise. So he layered up, pulled on boots older than memory, and stepped out into the white. The snow reached his shins. Each step crunched, like the woods were holding their breath. Past the tree line, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt alert. The kind of silence that doesn't wait, it watches. And that's when he saw them. Tracks, not just paw prints, human ones too. At first they seemed erratic, then panicked, and then bloody. Eli's pulse surged. He followed the trail, deeper boots sinking with every step, until the prints led him to a shallow dip near a frozen creek. There, beneath a torn, snow-covered tarp, he found what remained of a campsite, scattered cans, a crushed lantern. And worse, a scrap of cloth, soaked in dried blood, tied around a piece of nylon rope. Nearby, something glinted in the frost. He knelt, brushed the ice away, and picked it up, a metal tag. Small, etched with 3 letters, JKC. They meant nothing. But his gut twisted all the same. He scanned the trees. Every branch felt like a camera. Every shadow stretched longer than it should. That old feeling returned, deep, primal, from his days as a paramedic. Someone's watching. He didn't run, but he moved faster, his breath rising in clouds behind him, his head turning every few steps. Back at the cabin, Luna was pacing, tail stiff, posture rigid. Scout let out a soft bark, the first real sound from him since his arrival. Eli locked the door, bolted it, then stood there, back against the wood, trying to breathe. That night, Luna finally broke the distance between them. She leaned her weight gently against Eli's leg and stayed there. Not for warmth, for trust. He didn't speak. Just reached down and let his hand rest on her head. The first time he'd touched another living soul in longer than he could remember. The fire behind them hissed. Eli turned the metal tag over and over in his fingers. "Where did you come from, Luna?" he whispered. But the answer was already in his gut. They hadn't just wandered here, they had escaped. And something or someone they'd escaped from wasn't finished. Don't go anywhere. What Eli is about to uncover will send chills far colder than any blizzard. The wind returned with a grudge. By nightfall, the storm that had seemed to move on came back twice as fierce. It wasn't just snow anymore, it was something with teeth. It clawed at the cabin, rattled the windows, made the trees groan like old bones. Remembering, Eli stood at the window, firelight glowing behind him, watching the flakes spiral like ash. The silence had weight, the kind that didn't settle but stalked. Inside, Scout let out a faint whimper in his nest of blankets. Luna curled tighter beside him, her ears twitching at every creak in the walls. The cabin, usually cramped, suddenly felt vast and hollow, every shadow taller, every sound louder. But it wasn't the wind that cracked Eli open that night. It was memory. Storms always did that, ripped through not just trees, but timelines. This time of year was the hardest, not because of the isolation or the snow, but because this was when they died.
Miriam, Ellie, a patch of black ice, a truck that didn't stop. Screams, the wheel in his hands that refused to obey. He remembered it all like it was still happening. The twisted metal, the steam from the hood, the copper tang of blood in the air. And her hand. Ellie's little hand, reaching for him as the world went dark. That night hadn't just taken his family, it had taken him. He hadn't tried to die afterward, he just stopped trying to live. But now here he was, with a shivering pup, and a mother who'd walked through hell to get him here. And they were breathing, still breathing. He tossed another log into the fire, the flames flaring up like a heartbeat. Checked Scout warm, still alive. Luna edged closer, resting her chin on Eli's knee. He didn't move, just let her stay there. And for a moment in the hush, something inside him didn't feel so empty. Then came the sound. Not the wind, not a branch, a knock. Not loud, not frantic, just 3 soft taps, like someone politely testing the wood. Eli froze. Luna stood immediately, body rigid, ears perked. A growl rose low in her throat, deep primal. Eli grabbed the flashlight, heart slamming in his chest. He crept to the door, didn't speak, didn't open it, just peered through the small peephole he'd drilled years ago for no real reason. Until now. A man stood outside, mid-40s, clean-shaven, heavy, green coat with a wildlife control badge stitched neatly to the chest. Too neat. Too polished. His presence felt wrong, like a costume someone wore, too confidently. "Evening, sir," the man called out, voice easy, smooth. "Too smooth. Sorry to bother you. Got reports of a stray animal German Shepherd female. Got a pup with her. Seen anything?" Eli's blood turned to stone. Every detail he gave the breed, the pup, that wasn't general inquiry. That was knowledge. Too specific. Too accurate. He backed away from the door. "No animals here, just me." A pause. "You mind if I take a quick look around?" "I do, actually." A longer pause. "Suit yourself," the man said. A smile you could hear. "Stays safe out here. Gets lonely." And then he was gone. No argument. No resistance. Just faded into the tree line like a ghost. Eli didn't relax. Not one bit. He stayed by the window, watching the man's trail melt into the snow. Minutes passed, then an hour. He almost convinced himself it was over. Until Luna barked sharp, piercing, and sprinted to the back of the cabin. Scout whimpered. Eli followed her to the rear window, flashlight shaking in his grip. He didn't need to turn it on. The moon was bright enough. There, just beyond the shed, a figure moved. Same coat, same man, no flashlight, just walking. Slow. Toward the shed. Like he knew it. Like he belonged. Eli's heart roared. He grabbed the shotgun, still dusty but loaded, and flung open the back door. The snow bit into him. The man turned. Their eyes met. "Last warning," Eli said. His voice was flat, steel. The man just smiled again. "You really think they'll be safe here forever?" And then he disappeared. Back into the trees like fog. Eli stood frozen, the snow swallowing him whole. He didn't need more confirmation. Luna and Scout hadn't just escaped abuse. They were being hunted. And the next time that man came back, he wouldn't knock. Eli didn't sleep that night, not even for a moment. The adrenaline had carved itself into his spine, holding him upright, keeping his senses stretched thin across every floorboard, creak and gust of wind. Luna didn't rest either. She paced the room like a silent drumbeat of warning, her nails tapping out a rhythm that didn't ease. Scout whimpered in his dreams, unaware of the war happening just beyond the cabin walls. The fire crackled softly, casting moving shadows that made every corner seem alive. At 3:30 a.m. the woods fell still, not quiet still, like something out there had stopped moving, not because it had left, but because it was waiting. Then came the sound,
Not the knock this time, a metallic clank, soft, deliberate, from the shed. Eli moved before the fear could catch up. Flashlight in one hand, shotgun in the other, Luna at his heel, her growl now low and dangerous, from a place deeper than memory. The cold outside didn't sting anymore, it bit. The shed stood about 20 feet from the cabin, crouched in the snow like it knew what was coming. The door was ajar, just wide enough for something or someone to pass through. Fresh boot prints led to the threshold. None left. Whoever it was still in there. Eli's voice cut through the air. "You come out now, and I don't shoot." Silence. Then movement. The man stepped out. Same coat, same face, but no smile this time. Just eyes like black mirrors. He raised his hands like it was a joke. "Relax," he said casually. "Just making sure they're still alive." Eli didn't lower the gun. "Why?" The man shrugged. "They're valuable, let's leave it at that." His voice was too calm, like this wasn't a negotiation, like it was an exchange. "That pup's got a burn mark. You want to tell me what kind of value that is?" The man gave a crooked half smile. "Kind people pay for." Eli's stomach twisted, his vision narrowed. Scout wasn't a rescue, he was property, merchandise, branded, owned, sold. "You're not taking them," Eli said, voice hoarse. The man took a step forward. "You're not a cop. You live off-grid. No cell service, no neighbors. If you disappear..." He didn't finish the sentence, because Luna moved. Like lightning. No growl, no bark, just action. She slammed into the man's leg, knocking him off balance. He hit the ground with a grunt, a hidden pistol skidding across the ice. Eli kicked it away without thinking, shotgun still leveled, lungs heaving. Luna stood over the man now, growling from the pit of her soul. Her whole body shook, not just with rage, but with something deeper, something ancient, protective, unforgiving. Eli grabbed a coil of rope from inside the shed, hands steady, fast. He tied the man's hands behind his back, securing him to the base of a tree near the porch. All the while, Luna never blinked. The man didn't fight, didn't scream, he just muttered something under his breath. They were never meant to survive. That's why we get them cheap. Eli stared at him, at the bruises around his wrists, the cold creeping up his neck. And then he said, quietly, "You're wrong. They survived you. That makes them stronger than you'll ever be." Inside, Scout whimpered again. Eli rushed back in, dropping to his knees beside the little body, running a gentle hand along his side. Luna followed, circling around them both like a shield, then finally lay down, curling protectively around her son. And Eli realized something. Maybe Luna hadn't brought Scout to him because he was some random stranger in the woods. Maybe she knew. Maybe she'd seen in Eli what no one else had. Not someone perfect, not someone healed, but someone broken and willing to fight, willing to stay, willing to try again. And what happened next would prove just how powerful that choice could be, because in the final part of this story, the world finds out what really happened in that cabin. And what was once just survival becomes something no monster can ever take away. The first rays of morning didn't just crack the horizon, they cracked something inside Eli too. A quiet warmth began to settle into the cabin, not from the fireplace, but from something older, deeper. Something that had almost disappeared completely, hope. Scout, still wrapped tightly in the blanket, breathed slow and steady. His tiny nose twitched. His paws kicked softly against dreams. He wasn't strong yet, but he was alive. And Luna, her body curled protectively around him, rested her head on Eli's boot, like she finally believed she didn't have to guard alone. Outside, the man tied to the tree had stopped bluffing. Now he was begging. First with sarcasm, then desperation. But Eli didn't reply. He didn't need to. Because as the sun climbed higher, a sound joined the still morning air. The low crunch of tires rolling over frozen earth. 2 black trucks emerged from the trees, unmarked, quiet, purposeful. Their presence didn't scream. It commanded. Eli stepped out onto the porch, shotgun lowered but still in hand. His shoulders were tense, lips tight. The lead agent stepped out first. Angela Cortez. Eli recognized her instantly, though it had been years. She was a rookie the last time they'd worked together during his final days as a field medic on Joint Rescue Ops. Now she was leading one. "You sent the coordinates?" she asked. Eli nodded. "And the tag, the photos." He reached into his coat, pulled out the metal tag marked JKC, and handed it over. Angela glanced toward the restrained man, trembling at the base of the tree. "You know what you just did?" Eli didn't answer. "You took down the last leg of one of the most violent, deeply embedded underground breeding networks in 3 states, she said, her voice both professional and reverent. Eli didn't smile, but his shoulders finally dropped. Inside, agents moved carefully. One knelt beside Scout, lifting him gently into a soft carrier lined with blankets. They scanned his wounds, took blood samples, documented every scar. But when another officer tried to separate Luna for a full exam, she growled. Low, steady, protective. She stays, Eli said firmly, stepping in. They're not broken, they're healing. Together, Angela gave one short nod. Then we treat them together. Later that evening, Eli sat in the back of a small community auditorium, packed wall-to-wall with local rescue volunteers, shelter staff, and a few reporters who'd caught the scent of a story. He didn't want the spotlight, didn't want applause, but the shelter asked him to speak. Not about the legal case, but the human one. So he stood, hesitant Luna, at his feet, Scout tucked gently in his arms, bundled in a donated blanket embroidered with a name. Ellie. Eli cleared his throat. I used to save people, he began. At least I thought I did. Then I lost my wife. My daughter. And I stopped trying. The world got too quiet. He looked down at Luna. Until one night this dog came out of the forest. Carried her baby through a storm, through blood and snow, not because she had hope, but because she refused to stop. Silence. Not one dry eye in the room. She didn't know who I was. She just saw me. And somewhere along the way she gave me a reason to stop dying too. The video of his story would go viral in days. A man who saved a puppy, a mother who saved a man, and a little heartbeat named Scout who tied their broken worlds back together. The comments poured in from all over the world. Stories of loss, of healing, of survival. People saw themselves in it, saw proof that even in a world like this, second chances are real. Months passed. The cabin looked different now. Not polished, but lived in, real. Luna's bed stayed near the fire. Scout had doubled in size, strong enough to bark at squirrels, fast enough to chase snowflakes. The shed out back had been repurposed, not for storage, but as a small clinic where Eli began treating other lost, forgotten animals that came out of the trees. One afternoon, he walked to the edge of his property, a single flower in hand. He knelt down beside a small grave marked with his daughter's name, placed the flower gently into the snow-dusted soil. Luna sat beside him, tall and still. Scout curled at his side. I think you sent them, Eli whispered. And I'm finally listening, because sometimes healing doesn't arrive in thunder or glory. Sometimes it comes quietly. Through a mother's refusal to give up, through a pup's fragile breath, through a man learning day by day to come back to life. And if you've made it this far, maybe it's because a part of you believes in second chances too. If this story touched you, leave a comment. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. And maybe share it with someone who needs to believe in love, in redemption, in the power of never giving up. Because sometimes the most incredible rescues aren't about who you saved, but how they saved you.